on the next episode of Married People's Business.
YouTube sensation Kevin Samuels. Was he good or bad for marriage?
We talk about what his message was and how it affected the relationships in our communities.
Stay tuned. Well, you heard that sound, those applause, that music, so you know what time it is. That means that we're back with Married People's Business, and I am Michael Tolbert.
I'm Shalice Tolbert.
And we're here today to talk to you about things that impact married people that are in business, collaborators, and also to encourage folks to get together and to unify and to start something special through collaboration. Whether you are a married couple or if you're friends or family, just get out there and do it. And we always try to bring you timely topics to discuss things that impact unity, that impact collaboration. And one of the things that is a timely topic is the YouTube sensation Kevin Samuels. He unfortunately passed away, I believe yesterday, or maybe a day or so ago, day before. And we wanted to talk about Kevin Samuels. And for the most part, you know, he has a special place in my heart because he's part of the greatest fraternity in the world, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Shout out to the Noops, yo. And we wanted to talk about Brother Samuels because he was a very polarizing figure. And he had a lot of opinions about a lot of things. And we've heard so many people say things about him and about his opinions and about the things that he thought about. And very rarely do you hear a voice from married people that talk about what they think. So I thought this would be a very good show to kind of give a married people's perspective and talk about what his opinions did. Was it good for business? And what I mean by business, I mean married people's business. Was it good for business and collaboration, or was it negative? And I'm just going to open the floor up. Shalice, I know you had a lot of opinions about my good brother and my good new Kevin Samuels, and a lot of them were not good.
I'm not going to say I had a lot of opinions about him.
Yeah,
it
right.
wasn't necessarily, particularly anything specific. I didn't, totally agree with the way that he delivered what he delivered, his message. But, I'm not doubting that he was not an intelligent brother. Sometimes the way you deliver things can get lost. The message gets lost. So it kind of turned me off from, watching him or listening to him.
Well, this show is really going to be geared towards whether what he said and the things that he did throughout his short life. I believe he was 56 years old when he died. But throughout his time on this earth, some of the things that he said, did it push us closer to, people engaging in the institution of marriage and really taking that step to come together, which is really, for the most part, we all want somebody and to be together? Or was he too divisive, as you just suggested, that pushed us maybe backwards in that sense? And I can just tell you my thoughts on it really quickly. I believe that Kevin Samuels really, although he had some very divisive opinions, he really shined a light on the institution of marriage in such a way to show, particularly in the Black community, to show that we have some work to do in our communities. And I would listen to his videos just to see kind of what the temperature was. And one of the things that I noticed is that there's a civil war going on, folks. And it's sad. And that civil war is the fight between Black men and Black women. And if you can see the energy on the threads and his posts and his shows, it really made me sad to see us fighting one another like this when in reality we should be trying to come together, which is what this podcast and our show is about, is highlighting the positivity and really getting people to come together and to build something special, and it really just broke my heart whenever I would see a Kevin Samuels thread, and just to see how much divisiveness that was going on between black men and black women.
Well, I think that's the part that I was kind of referring to with him, and the way he delivered the message. So, the message may have been, hey, here's the traditionalism of marriage or the relationship, and this is what needs to be done in order to get to this point in a relationship, or even to get a relationship started. But the way that, unfortunately, it was delivered, it may have just gone on deaf ears. And so now, bringing it back to what you're talking about, us as a community, as a black community, we then are fighting amongst each other because of the delivery of a message that we might be missing.
Yeah, I get that, but me and you had these conversations. This is where I really wanted to talk about this, because this is a issue that impacts married people all the time in terms of your delivery of the message. And you always tell me, I understand, Michael, but it's the way you said it. You remember you always tell me that?
Yes.
Because and maybe that's why I identified. I understood exactly what Kevin Samuels was going through, because sometimes I think we miss the forest for the trees, and sometimes the message is not sugar and cream. Sometimes the message is hard. Sometimes the message is brutal. And I think sometimes in our communities, we don't want to receive. We want things to be easy sometimes. We want that message to be delivered with ease. Whereas if you look back at our old civil rights leaders, if you look at Martin Luther King, if you look at Malcolm X, and you look at how they delivered, Marcus Garvey, they said some very, very shocking things to jolt you into action. And my fear from looking at Kevin Samuel threads and looking at the communication that goes on in our community, somehow we've lost that shock value. We've lost the ability to be able to deal with hard topics. And when we deal with those hard topics, to grow from them. And at the end of the day, realize that we're brother and sister, we're husband and wife, and we got to build a community to get together. What I saw us kind of spread apart and fragment.
Well, I think what you have to realize too is that there is already a fragmentation that is there. From the times that you're referring to, from the leaders that you're referring to, there was more of a sense of community, there was more of a sense of family values during those times, and unfortunately that got diluted over time. And so the fragmentation was already there. Then to have the incitement of whether he did it for the sensationalism of, getting more views or more subscribers or listeners, that then compounded what was already in existence in the fragmentation. And then it took away from his message or whatever he was trying to say.
Right. And one of the things that Kevin Samuels talked about a lot was gender roles. And he talked about how the man basically he would use terms like alpha male and beta male, which really I didn't really care for, because I think it diluted the conversation and the substance of the conversation. But at the end of the day, when you cut through all of it, really what he was talking about is that men need to take their communities back, and men need to be the leaders in their communities and in their homes. And for folks that are biblical, like you and I are, we understand that message completely, that God talks about man being the head of his house. You understand what I'm saying? And that rubbed a lot of women the wrong way. And why is that?
Well, I think that there are not a lot of people that really take to heart that is a biblical principle. The people want to use that in a worldly way. I'm the head because I'm a man.
Right.
Not
right.
I'm the head because of God. Then following God's word, that makes me the head.
Right.
So that's where it gets lost. And too many people are living under the worldly concept of men leading versus the godly concept of men leading. I mean, as independent as I think that I am, as forward moving as I am still traditional in that sense, because my faith allows me to understand what that means.
Right, and that's interesting that you say that, because I'm curious. I don't want you to rat out your friends, because y'all got, women talk about things privately that, like, men, we talk about things privately. Like, I got a group chat right now that I can't show you on a text message.
I don't want to see your group chat. I really
and it ain't the group chat that with the girls.
No, I don't want to see your group chat with your guys.
But we talk about things in terms of relationships and Kevin Samuel-ish things. And I'm curious, what is the temperature of, like, the 40-something or 30, 40-something black woman in terms of their views of Kevin Samuels and his thoughts on men being the head of the house? Well, I'm curious as to, like, the groups and the circles you run into. You don't have to say no names.
No, I'm not going to say any names. I think generally that the perception is that he is misogynistic. Obviously, that was out there. Every time you saw his name, that's what the description was, whether it was from men or women that disliked the way he delivered it. But I think that, more surprisingly than people realize, we are traditionalists at the core. We want that family structure. We want to be able to have the husband, the wife, the traditional roles, I believe, in the sense of nobody's being disrespected, nobody's being diminished in what they do. And I think that within itself then allows the person to receive whatever message that he was trying to deliver. But when you cloak that message in a way that kind of demeans what we are doing, then we're not ready to receive it. So then we don't like them.
Well, see,
and we're emotional.
But see, this is the problem that I have, and this is the problem that I have with society, and particularly social media. Like, people thought that Kevin Samuels just dropped out the air, right, and all of a sudden he was Kevin Samuels. But if you look at Kevin Samuels' history on social media and you look at his career, he had been around, like, for years before he became the Kevin Samuels. So this is the problem that I have with society and social media. When he was nice and he was just talking about suits and cufflinks and image consulting, nobody wanted to hear what he had to say. Nobody wanted to hear anything he had to say until he morphed into Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair and added a WWE, WWF spin on what he was saying. And then all of a sudden, now he has 1 million viewers, and now the message that he was trying to probably get out before that nobody would hear him, now it's out there, but he had to hit you over the head with a foreign object like WWF to get it out there. So how do you get that message to the masses when people don't want to hear nice, sugary, and sweet? What they want is the controversy.
Well, one of the reasons why we do this podcast. So that can be, for lack of a better term, I guess, balanced out. But culturally in society, we have definitely been more attracted to what I'm going to term as the negative thing, to the sensationalism of something. That is going to get so many more views than just a regular old nice person that's just giving you great information, but you're never going to click on that because it's boring. It's not showing you drama. It's one of the reasons, you say that, and I remember I used to watch, the Housewives series, the reality shows, and then I stopped because I was just like, this is sensationalizing drama, and I'm a low-key person. I like conflict, and every time I'm looking at this is drama, and I think that, we've turned into that society that expects it. We also are a society that does not go beyond the headline. So
wow, that's deep.
You have to catch them with the headline.
That's deep.
And that's what he was doing.
Right. So in order for him to highlight the problem, which is the fragmentation of relationships, he had to turn into this character. It kind of reminded, and it's sad because it kind of reminds me of, I'm a big boxing fan. So I love Floyd Mayweather. He's probably if not my favorite boxer, I would say Muhammad Ali is my favorite boxer, but Floyd Mayweather is probably a close second. And if you look at Floyd's career, when he was Pretty Boy Floyd, he had no followers, unless outside of the pure boxing fans. But when he started throwing money in the screen and turned into Money Mayweather, then all of a sudden this guy starts selling out stadiums. And that's basically what Kevin Samuels did. He turned himself into Money Mayweather and shocked the world. And then you heard what he had to say. And my fear is that some of the very legitimate points that he was making were lost because of the character.
Right. But it got him more followers. And it's so funny. You're asking, you asked, how are the women receiving it? They were still listening to him and hated him. I stopped. I was just like, oh, this is not for me. I don't need to hear him. The little spoofs of him by the one comedian was hilarious.
Avion Crockett.
Yeah. But I was just like,
wait a minute. How tall are you? How tall are you?
No, we're not talking.
On a scale of 1 to 10, and you can't use 7.
So that type of stuff is totally. That was just ignorant to me. Why do we have to go down that route for you to make a point to me?
I just have a question. Am I a high value man?
Are you a high value man?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Good. That was a good.
You know what?
That was a good answer.
But I think that he did what he did because of the pressures of society to make his podcast, his YouTube channel more popular. And who's to say that he was going to stay that polarizing once he got the captured audience? But he got the captured audience. Like, as much as people say they did not like him, they didn't want to hear this, they were still watching this man. The message was still being delivered in a way, but the reception of it then turned into just wanting to combat him, and nobody was listening. It's like when we've talked about before how when people disagree or you have arguments and you're just talking to be talking, you're not listening.
Right.
And I think that's what started happening.
Right. And that's sad because if you like one of the quotes that he said that I listened to, it said, men that have no leadership skills have no husband qualities. And me and you have always talked about that. Like that, in order for us, particularly in the black community, in order for us to change our communities, we need more strong black men as leaders. And I think that point that he made was lost in between the how much do you weigh and rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10.
Because I think what happened, and you and I kind of talked about this before as we were coming up with the concept for the show, is that it turned into, I don't want to say a bashing, but it seemed like it was highlighting the negative things of women. And I would have never known he said anything like that because I couldn't get past that. The way that he delivered what he was saying about women. But then he did it and said, this is what men expect. But when you go about it in such a way and not go to the traditionalism of it, what you're trying to get at, like he stayed on 100 of, trying to be the sensationalism, the divisiveness, because that's what got him viewers. But what you're talking about is a very valid point of men being leaders in our community, men having husband qualities. And talking about those husband qualities makes you talk about wifely qualities, what we should be as women if we want to be wives. And that takes us back to the biblical sense of everything that goes into that, because marriage is biblical.
And then when you have those husband qualities and you look for a wife with those wifely qualities, then what do? You say, let's build something together. Let's start a business.
Absolutely.
Let's go down and volunteer at the local YMCA or the local Boys and Girls Club. Let's adopt a school. Let's adopt a highway. And to me, that's the danger and the tragedy of Kevin Samuels is what really should have been taken as a charge particularly to our community to come together and to really unify. I think that it all got lost, and words probably as fragmented as ever because of his show and because of some of the things that he said, as opposed to pushing us closer together, which is the title of the show is Kevin Samuels Good for Business? And I'm torn on it. I think that for me, I heard loud and clear what he was saying, but I think to the masses, I think all they heard was, how tall are you? How much do you weigh? And if you had to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. And I think it pushed particularly the black community away. And you know what happened? During that whole time, other communities were coming together and stronger.
Right.
Our communities are fragmented. We're not marrying each other. We're actually fighting amongst each other. We're not building businesses together. We're moving out of our communities instead of coming back into our communities and opening up businesses and trying to grow our communities. And it's sad because that's what I want his legacy, if he does have a legacy, is highlighting the problems that we have, because I don't think he intentionally aimed out at trying to do that. But I think the result of it was showing right now where we are we're not together, and our communities reflect it.
Well, and I think that we allow too many things into our communities, into our culture, without voicing that does not help us, without saying we can do this ourselves, without saying how do you come into our community and have this here and you contribute nothing to the community and go back to where you live and take our dollars.
Right.
Like our dollars don't circulate in our own businesses.
Right. Our own communities.
Our own communities.
Right.
Because they're not our business. They're not businesses owned by people that look like us.
Right. Yeah, that's it. Well, that was a good show. I mean, I think that was something that we wanted to talk about. Kevin Samuels, love him or hate him, he did bring up some issues that, for me, impacted the institution of marriage. And did it push us closer to coming together and unifying? Some might say it has, because it shines a light on the problem. Other people might say that it pushed us farther apart. We're farther apart than we are ever. But, the discussion had to be had, and we'll see what his message and his dialogue over these years that he had his podcast and had his show, what the effects and the fallout of that is going to be. So, Shalise, you want to close us out?
Well, as always, we put God first, and we want you to follow us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, share this podcast. You can listen to the podcast on all the streaming mediums, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts. Married People's Business is what you look for, and we thank you for your continued support of this podcast.
God bless you and take care.